So today we're going to do the handover video on this Burstner Ixeo 728. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. I'd like to start the video by saying that this vehicle hasn't been valeted as of yet. I just wanted to get this video out to you just before you collect. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you can see that you've got your fill up points, and remember it's diesel into there. Opening up the passenger door, you'll notice that you've got your bonnet release catch here. I'll open the bonnet and show you just underneath there in a minute. And on the door sill, you can see that you've got your tyre pressures as well. On all of your windows, this model has been spec'd with Remis cab blinds. To operate these, all you'll need to do is simply pinch the clip and pull the blind out like so. Pull that up, and via the magnetic strip that will just snap into place and will allow you to black out the entire cab. You've blinds on each of your windows along with the big window at the front. Again, just simply pinch the plastic clip and pull them along, and like I mentioned, the magnetic clip will just then connect them two together. When taking these blinds back in, simply pull, and if you lead from the bottom just like so, you'll be able to push the blind back in to situ. If you lead from the bottom, I find that it's a lot easier to get the blinds back into position. If you lead from the top, sometimes the blinds can get caught at the bottom and cause them to twist and potentially break. And as a rule of thumb with anything in a motorhome, if it feels like it's being forced, you're probably doing something wrong. So just take a minute just to evaluate what you're doing. Coming over to the bonnet, I'll just lift the bonnet up for you now. Underneath the bonnet, the main things that you need to know is if you're ever going to jump start the vehicle. If you are, you've got your negative terminal, which is just onto here as indicated by the sticker above, and your positive terminal is just located underneath this cap here. It's a little bit difficult to see on the video, but there's a plus sign there that indicates that it's positive, and that's where you can connect your positive terminal onto. They're the main things that you need to know as mentioned, but just to point out a couple more things, you can see you've got your engine oil here along with your dipstick below. You've then got your brake disc fluid up at the top. Your engine coolant is next. Your power steering fluid is next to that. And finally in the corner you can see that you've got your washer fluid. Moving on to the side of the vehicle, you can see that this vehicle has got a full awning fitted. I'll send you a separate video showing you how to operate the awning. As you can appreciate, I've only the one hand in this video, so I'll send you a separate video showing you how that can operate. Now, one thing to remember with the awning is if it is a windy day, don't use the awning, take it back in. As you can appreciate, this is like having a massive sail on the side of the van. So if you do get a bit of wind underneath it, it could potentially rip the awning off, damaging your vehicle and of course the awning itself, so just bear that in mind. Another thing to bear in mind as well is you can use this awning in the rain. However, if it does get wet, you do need at some point to wind that awning out just to dry the canvas, just to ensure that it doesn't lead to mould or rot later down the line. Moving on, you've then got your habitation door. We'll jump on to the inside shortly, and on this side, opening up this locker, you can see it gains you access to your cassette toilet. When removing the cassette, all you need to do is pull up on this orange lever and slide it out like so. Before removing the cassette, please ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed. If it is open and you go to remove this cassette, it will get stuck and trapped, and potentially if you carry on pulling, it could potentially snap the system on the inside and the mechanism. So please ensure that the blade is closed before removing the cassette. Once you've done that, remove it like so, slide it out, and to empty this, all you'll need to do is simply pull out the funnel, obviously remove the cap on the end, and clicking the orange button on the back, that will release an internal vacuum which will allow you to empty the entire contents of the cassette. Once you've done that, you can put a bit of water in here just to wash out the system, and then pop the cap back on. One thing to mention as well is if you are using blue fluid to break down this system, using the cap, there's a little measurement on there, it will show you how much you need to then pop the cap back in. Once you've done that, the cassette can go back in, but one thing to mention is you will notice you've got this second orange switch here, which actually turns. This makes contact with the blade when we're on the inside of the vehicle. So when you open and close the blade on the toilet, which I'll show you how to do later, this allows you to open and close the cassette itself. This should always stay in this position. There should be no need for you to turn that. If that is off slightly and you push the cassette back in, it will again get forced and jammed. So please ensure it remains in this position at all times when removing and putting it back in. With the cassette back up into place, all you need to do is simply slide the cassette into position, let the handle connect into position so it's nice and sturdy, ready for transit. Next up, we've got your gas locker. You can see that this holds 2 gas bottles, and if you bring a gas bottle with you on the day, we'll happily hook one up for you. You can see that you've got your gas regulator here, which is this metal piece here. All you'll need is a pigtail, which you can purchase from our on-site shop. And all that will do is it will connect to the gas regulator on the top here through the thread, and the pigtail will then connect into the gas bottle. When you're travelling, please ensure that your gas is turned off for obvious reasons. If your gas is turned on and you're involved in a collision, it's highly flammable, extremely dangerous. So please ensure that the gas is turned off when travelling, and then when on site, you can of course turn that on and let the gas flow through. Next to the gas locker is your garage at the back. So in the garage you've got your awning pole, you've also got your jack. This vehicle has got a spare wheel as well. You can see you've got your carpets in the back, along with some cushions, and finally in here you've got some dividing pieces which will stop you from rolling out the bed. Not that you'll use them, but that's what they are there for. It just gives you a ledge just to, as I say, stop you from rolling out of the front bed once it's down. To the rear you've then got a bike rack fitted to this vehicle. To use this bike rack, all you'll need to do is unhook the hooks here, pull the bike rack down towards you, and then your bike wheels can then connect onto these ledges here, and using these as little zip ties you can tie your wheels into position. You've then got the same things on the arms which will then connect to the bike frame, and as I say, if you'd like me to show you in more detail and handover, just let me know and I'll happily do that. Up at the top, just above the bike rack, you can see that you've got your reversing camera, which links through to the double din unit on the inside of the van. And going around to the side, you can see you've got another access point, as you can see, into your garage. Moving on from the garage, you've got your 2 fridge vents here. Now you can get little winter covers here which connect onto here for when you're storing the vehicle. Now please bear in mind, this is obviously where the fridge pulls all of its air from to cool the fridge. So if it is an extremely hot day, what I'd recommend is just try and keep this area in shade, just to stop the sun beating down on this side of the van. It'll just, as I say, allow the fridge to run a little bit more efficiently. Next up, as indicated by this sticker, we've got your first drain down point. You have 3 main drain down points in the vehicle. You've got your wastewater drain down point, which is actually external to the vehicle. You've then got your boiler drain down point and your freshwater drain down point, and they're located within your convenience locker, which we'll get to later on. Now for your external water, this is the only tank which is external to the vehicle. So what I'd personally recommend is, if you're using this vehicle in extremely cold temperatures, use a bucket and put that bucket underneath and leave this tank open. That will ensure that any water that ends up in that tank will drop into the bucket, ensuring that nothing will freeze. Now I believe this vehicle may have a heated tank. Some vehicles do, some vehicles don't, depending on the specification. But I'd still recommend leaving that tank open and putting a bucket underneath, because you never know whether that heater could potentially fail. And this will ensure that there's no water in that system, again ensuring that there's no frozen water that could potentially crack the tank. Now for the other 2 drain down points, the boiler and the fresh water, which are located in here, they're on the inside of the vehicle, and they will only freeze if you freeze whilst using the van. You do of course need to drain them down after using the vehicle, but you should be good to go. Now coming over to the waste drain down point, there's a little handle here, as you can see. There's a handle, somewhere in the vehicle, which just connects onto here, and next to that is your waste outlet pipe. So when you're on site, and this goes for all your drain down points, there'll be a big grid that you can drive over. Simply drive over that and empty the tank. All you'll do is the handle connects onto there and you just twist it down and that will drain down the entire system. Once you've done that and you've drained down the majority of the water into the tank on site, into the grid rather, when you're travelling home, we recommend leaving all your drain down points open, as you're travelling home, that vibration from the road will ensure that all that residual water makes its way out of the tank, and there's no residual bits of water remaining in the system for when you come to store it in the winter. And like I mentioned earlier, please ensure that you drain down all your tanks when you are not using the vehicle. It doesn't matter as much in summer, but definitely in winter. But I personally recommend doing it all year round just to get into the habit of having them systems drained down. Above that, just in between the wastewater and your convenience locker, you've got your Truma chimney. This is your vent for the heating on the inside of the vehicle. This can get quite hot, so just be careful about hanging anything on here or getting it too close to that. And finally, on the side of the vehicle, you've got your convenience locker. Now, as I mentioned, housed in the convenience locker are your two main drain down points. That is that little handle that I was actually telling you about, which connects onto the wastewater. So you can see that lever just connects onto that bar there to allow you to turn it. And in here, you've got your freshwater tank. So firstly, before moving on to the drain down points, to fill up the freshwater tank, you'll of course need to make sure it's sealed. And to fill it up, all you'll need to do is remove this white cap. And as you can see, you've got an overspill cap here. With that overspill cap removed and placed on the tank, you can then use a food grade hose pipe, which then goes onto the inside of the freshwater tank and will allow you to fill the entire 120 litres up. As I mentioned, with the food grade hose pipe, I recommend making sure that you do use a food grade hose pipe as opposed to a normal hose pipe. The reason for that is it will ensure that no bacteria builds up in the pipe when filling up the tank. I don't recommend drinking out of the freshwater tank personally. If you're drinking water, just take bottled water. But if you're washing up, you're taking a shower or you're boiling the water, you're absolutely fine to obviously drink the water and out of this tank and use it. Now, if you wanted to clean this tank out, you'll notice that you've got this red cap here. Just simply remove that and you can clean it out, and you can use water purifying tablets just to pop into there to purify the water. But like I mentioned, I wouldn't drink directly out of the tank personally. Now, to drain this tank down, it's dead easy. You can see that you've got this black nib here. To drain it down, simply turn it like so, and that will begin to drain it out. I don't think we've got anything in the tank at the moment, hence why nothing is draining out. But all you've got to do is turn it. You have two options with this. So you've got a drain down, which will drain the entire water tank to 20 litres as indicated by the sticker, or you can drain down the entire tank. The quick drain down point, which allows you to drain everything but 20 litres, is really designed for if you're moving off site rather, and you go into another site and you want to keep a bit of water in the tank. The manufacturer recommend travelling with only 20 litres in the tank due to weight distribution and payload on the vehicle. Now, if you're packing up for the day and you're done, you're going home, all you've got to do is continue twisting like so. And you may have not heard it, but there's a little click that you can hear, and you can also feel it, which will click past the bung, and that will allow you to drain down the entire freshwater tank and the entire 120 litres. And like I mentioned earlier, just do that over a big grid on site, and then when travelling home, you can leave that open. I'll close that back up now. And then you can see next up, we've then got your hookup point for your 230 volt electric. Now, this is one of the things that you need to check before travelling off, as it is located on the inside of the vehicle. Please ensure that this is, of course, not still connected onto the site pitch. So always remove this before before driving away. As you can imagine, it will cause a bit of damage. So make sure that that's the case. But this will allow you to have 230 volt power into the vehicle. So that will allow you to use appliances like your 230 volt electric and like sockets, and if you've got a microwave in the vehicle as well. Now, below this brings us on to your drain down point for the boiler, which I've been talking about. Now this is a frost protection valve. At the moment it's open. You know it's open because you've got a black nib which is up on the inside of the diamond, and you've got a blue tab on the outside of the gauge. To close this, all you need to do is turn the diamond like so. You can see that the black bung, or nib rather, just slots into the inside, and all you've got to do, press that blue button in so it becomes flush, and then you're good to go. That is the boiler, which is sealed. To drain it, all you need to do is turn that, and again you can see the blue nib pops out as well as the black nib pops up. Now this reacts to temperature. It's called a frost protection valve because, as I mentioned, it reacts to temperature. So if you, for example, forgot to drain the boiler during the winter, this reacts to temperature. So if it gets to a certain temperature, it will simply automatically trip and drain down the boiler itself, which is really useful. However, what you need to bear in mind is if you've not used the vehicle in a while, or you're using the vehicle in really cold weather conditions, what you'll do is you'll come to seal this unit up. So you may turn the diamond like so the nib goes in, and you'll go to press the blue button in, but it'll keep pinging out. The reason for that is this, as I mentioned, reacts to temperature. So if it's too cold, it will not allow you to seal the boiler, because, as I say, it's a frost protection valve. Now if that is the case, it often happens when you've not used the vehicle in a while, or it is a cool day. All you'll need to do is jump on the inside of the vehicle, turn your heating on, the vehicle heating, not the water heating, but the vehicle heating, and that will heat this area up. After about 30 minutes, this will be nice and warm, and you can then push that blue valve in and seal the boiler. I'll leave that open so it's ready to use. And then right at the back you can see that you've got your final drain down point on this, which is actually linked to the boiler. This drains everything from the boiler beyond, so all your taps and things like that. In the up position, as it is now, it is open, and then all you've got to do is flick it down, and that will close the system. As I say, I'll leave it up for the time being so it's all drained. Now that concludes the outside of the motorhome. We're now going to move on to the inside. Okie dokie, so we're now on the inside of the vehicle. As you walk through the habitation door, you can see that you've got your control panel directly above you. To turn this on, you've got your main master switch here. Select that, and you can see that that will turn on a couple of the lights. That will then activate your switches here, where you can then turn on the lights on the inside of the vehicle. Above there, you've then got your habitation battery level. Hold that, you can see as we're plugged in at the moment, it is reading at 100%. And below that, at the bottom, you've then got your vehicle battery level, which again, we're pretty high. We're at about 12.7 volts there, reading on the engine battery. On the other side, you've got the same again, but for your water tank levels. So you've got your fresh water tank up at the top. Hold that, as you can see, with nothing in at the moment, hence why nothing is reading. And below, you've then got your wastewater level. Click that. And again, with nothing in there either, hence why nothing is showing. It will just show up a blue light on the side here once that is full. Finally, you've then got your pump button here. Click that on to turn the pump on. Now, obviously, only turn the pump on when you've got water in the vehicle. You don't want to have that on whilst there's no water in the vehicle itself, because it will simply burn out the pump when left for a period of time. So please ensure that the pump is only on when you've got water in the vehicle. Providing you have got water in the van, click your pump on, go to your taps, and that's all your taps including your shower, and then turn them on and turn them to hot. And what that will do is it'll pull fresh water from the fresh water tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. It will spurt and splutter, and then when it's running steadily, you've primed your system for your hot water. Once you've done that, flick it over to cold and do the exact same. Again, for all of your taps, and when it's running steadily, you've primed your system. One thing to bear in mind is when you are doing it on the hot water, it will take a bit of time to pull that water through. Naturally, the boiler holds 10 litres of water, so you've got to appreciate it's got to pull for quite a distance. So just be patient with it, and then when it's running steadily, you have primed your system for your hot water and your cold, and you're good to go. This is, of course, where you'll need to make sure that that drain down point is sealed to ensure the water can pass through and it's not just draining out onto the bottom of the vehicle. Now, once you've done that, you can in fact leave your pump on, because each of your taps have got something called a micro switch fitted, which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it. So it's a little bit like when you're at home, you turn the pump on, you turn your tap on and water pressurizes and comes out. It's the same here. As I mentioned, the only time you do need to turn that pump off is when you've got no water in the vehicle. Coming back up to the control panel, that concludes everything from the main control panel, but next to that you've also got your Truma heating. To turn this on, all you've got to do is select the button here, and what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to deselect this for the time being. Right, so everything below the line, once it's on, is what you want to select. You can see that you've got this little dial here where you can flick between the options, and as the blink, that's in essence you hovering over the option. Click in to then select. First one is the vehicle's temperature. You can take this all the way up to 30 degrees if you wanted. Next up, you've then got your water temperature. You can either run this off Eco, Hot or Boost. Eco is approximately 40 degrees. Hot is approximately 60 degrees. And Boost will, instead of heating the vehicle itself, will concentrate on heating the water. Next up is then your fuel, and this is really important because you need to decide which fuel you've got supplied to the vehicle. As I've no gas bottles in the vehicle at the moment and I'm only hooked up to electric, I'd personally run it off EL2. Your options with this are EL2, EL1, Mix 2, Mix 1 and gas. So gas is pretty self-explanatory. If you've got gas and you want to run it off gas, click gas. If you want to run it off gas and a mixture of 1 kilowatt electric, click Mix 1. If you want to run it off gas and 2 kilowatt electric, Mix 2. And then if you're just running it off electric, you can either run it off EL1, which is 1 kilowatt electric, or 2 kilowatt electric from EL2. 9 times out of 10 when you're on site, you'll be given 2 kilowatt electric to run the heater off, so you can just simply stick it on EL2. The only time you'll need to really put it on Mix 2 or just purely gas is if it's a really cool day and you want to get the vehicle up to temperature as quickly as possible. Gas will always work the best in that instance. Now, just bear in mind that on certain sites, I'll just go back to this, on certain sites, you may be provided with less power, especially when you go abroad. French sites are renowned for it. They don't provide you with much electric. So you may be forced to select the heating off EL1. Now, a vehicle of this size isn't going to heat the vehicle on 1 kilowatt electric. It just isn't going to work. It's going to take an awful long time. It just won't get up to temperature. So if that is the case, either run it off Mix 1 or just purely gas. It'll work a lot more efficiently. Moving on from the fuel, you've then got your fan. Now at the moment, because I've not got anything selected, just give them the option of vent, which will recirculate the air in the vehicle. Now if I turn on the heating, for example, you can see we're on EL1 at the moment, but just to, for an example, if I click on the fan now, it'll give me the option of Eco, High or Boost. Sorry, no, there's no boost mode on this, apologies, just Eco or High. Now Eco will is, you know, obviously turning the fan on, and High is just a more intensified version of that. Finally, you've then got a little timer, so you can set a timer of when you want the heating to kick in and to go off. You've then got the time, so you can change the time on the panel. And then finally, got a little spanner here. In here is the reset. There's a couple more things like index and language, but the main things that you need to know is if you're ever going to reset the panel, just click that middle button to reset it. Now the times that you'll need to reset it tend to be if you get an error code on the panel. Now you often get an error code because you've selected the wrong fuel. So say for example, if I was, because I've not got any gas selected in the vehicle at the moment, if I turn the heating on and I go to the fuel and I select gas, what will happen is I'll get a fault code on here because it's trying to heat the vehicle with something that it's not got. If that happens, you need to go into that spanner, reset the system. It'll say preset. You need to click that again, and then the screen will flicker. It'll say initializing, and then it'll come back on. Now, you'll need to wait a full 20 minutes, although it looks like this panel is back on and ready. You do need to wait a full 20 minutes for the entire reset to be done. Once that's been done, you're good to go. But please ensure that you always select the right fuel that you've got. One thing to mention as well is if you are running this off 230 volt electric, before turning this off, just simply remove the hookup cable. You'll then get an error code because you've taken the fuel away from the panel, or the boiler rather. So with that in mind, turn this panel off when you're moving on from site, and then remove your fuel. Same thing goes for turning off your gas. Just ensure that that is turned off first before removing the fuel, because what you'll have to do is when you then arrive on site, you'll be met with an error code where you then have to reset the entire thing before you can then use the vehicle. Now, final thing on the heating, the reason I'd personally recommend to prime your boiler as soon as you get in the van is it will just allow you to get water into that boiler, allowing it to heat up. So when you're on site and you've filled up your fresh water and then you've primed your system, as I've told you, if you whack your heating on, for your water heating, that will then give it a chance to start heating up. And as I say, that's the first thing you do. After about 30 to 40 minutes, that water will be nice and warm. So when you come to use it, it'll be ready to use for warm water. And as I say, that's the first thing you do, you'll be good to go. Turning away from the panels up here, you can see that you've got a really big lounge in this vehicle, as well as a drop-down bed up at the top. Your drop-down bed controls are here. You'll need a little key which slots into there. You turn that and that will activate the system and you can drop the bed. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But just to point out, if anything does go wrong with this bed, you have got a manual override, which just, so like a little bar, I'll show you on handover, which connects into there and you can wind the system down or up if anything happens. Now obviously a lot of people do ask the question whether much goes wrong with these beds. What tends to happen is you often blow a fuse. You've got to be careful at how much you're putting on the bed, you know, how thick your duvet is, because if it's pressed right up against the ceiling, it could potentially blow a fuse. The same thing goes for your pillows. I'd recommend taking your pillows off and sticking them elsewhere. But like I mentioned, what you tend to do is you just tend to blow a fuse on this. So if you take some spare fuses with you wherever you're going, if that was to happen, you can simply replace the fuse and you should be up and running. But failing that, if that doesn't work, worst case scenario, you have got your manual override, which can slot into there. Now as you can see, I've popped the key in here so it's ready to use. Before we drop the bed, there's a couple of things we need to do. We need to drop the table. You drop the table simply by pressing this and applying weight onto the tabletop so that can slot into position. And then all you need to do is swivel your two seats at the front, which I'll do for you now. And just like that, we've got the two seats swiveled. When you swivel them round, ensure that they're pushed all the way to the back. And you've got the table, which has been just put down so it's ready to allow for the bed. One thing I did forget to mention about the bed when I was talking about your fuses is your fuses are actually located underneath the passenger seat, the majority anyway. So if you do need to change a fuse, you can just find them underneath that passenger seat. You just need to remove that front grille just on the trim panel there. Now, to drop this down, as I say, turn the key, ensure that the area is clear, and then all you've got to do is press that button and that will drop down the bed. Now it'll stop not far off the top, and this is where it lifts the front section up, as this is a lengthways bed. And then click the button again, and that will allow you to drop it all the way down. There's two presets here. You can actually have it halfway if you wanted. Most customers will have it all the way down, so if that's the case, drop it again, and then you can drop it into position. Now with this, what I'd recommend, it can get quite tight against this, so what I'd recommend is unzipping this cushion here before dropping the bed all the way down. That will just allow the bed to make it clear it past this cushion here, and this will allow you to get it all the way down. Now as I mentioned, all the bedding can stay on here. Just please be mindful about the duvet, the thickness of the duvet, but your pillows, stick them elsewhere in the vehicle. Once you've done that, all you've got to do, click that button and up it goes. It'll get to a point, it'll lock in, and then the bed at the front will drop down, and then you can pop the bed up like so. And then you're good to go, you've got your lounge back. Before moving on from the lounge as well, you have got a little bit of storage in here, which you can just access by lifting up this insert here. There's some storage underneath this bench seat as well. A lot of customers ask whether they've got storage underneath here, but they haven't, as that is where the boiler and the water tank is located from that convenience locker that I was mentioning. In here as well, you've got a drop-down bracket with a telly on, should you need to watch it. And all your windows, you've got blackout blinds and fly screens as well. This particular window is a sliding window, so you can actually use this during travel, and all you've got to do is unclip it and slide it back. However, the other windows, I'll just come over now, these hinge out, as you can see, like so, and then snap into position. But when travelling, these of course need to be shut. You can put these on venting just to allow a bit of air flow through, but please ensure that these are closed all the way, just to ensure that no wind gets underneath it and pulls the window away. That's the same that goes for your skylights throughout the vehicle. These operate by simply pressing this button in and pulling the skylight back up like so, and then you just lock it in to position like that. But as I say, they're things to check. Just make sure that they're sealed, as well as your windows, and then you're good to go. Rightio, now moving backwards into the kitchen area. We've spoken obviously about priming the system. On here you've got 3 gas hobs. They'll only run obviously off gas, with a little igniter switch there to feed the gas through. Below that you've then got some storage here for your cutlery, and you will notice that you've got these red valves here. These are what are called isolation valves. They allow you to isolate areas of the vehicle. Don't touch these, leave these as they are. These are only for the technicians when working on the vehicle. Underneath, you've got a little oven and grill, and below that, you've again a little bit more storage. To this side, again, this is a big slide out drawer, with again, a great bit of storage in, especially for your wine bottles as well. Up at the top, you've storage all along, and you can see that you've a little bit more storage in here, as well as where your aerial is located. This aerial obviously helps the telly get a signal. You've got a little booster here, which you can turn on and off. Leave this on at all times. There's no point on turning it off. It won't drain anything. Leave that on. That will turn off automatically when you turn the panel off. So of course you need that on for this to operate. You've also got a little dial on here so you can improve the range. But if you just look at the colour of the light here, you can see when it's flashing green or lighting up green, it qualifies as a good signal. Amber is not so good and red isn't very good. So if you do need to improve it, all you'll need to do is simply screw this, push this up, and then tighten this into position, just like so. You can also move this aerial around, and you've got a little arm on here just to wind it, and that will tilt the head of the aerial again to better your signal. Again, please ensure when you're moving off, you're checking these things, but ensure that the aerial is in the down position and is locked in, because you don't want to be travelling and hitting any trees as you're going, because that will damage the aerial. Below that is your Dometic fridge. Your Dometic fridge is a 3-way system, which means basically there's 3 ways to power it. So you can either run it off 230 volt electric, gas, or 12 volt battery. Now, when are you going to be using them? So when you're hooked up to site, like I am, for example, you're going to run it off this little power cable here, this little plug icon. As I say, that will allow you to run the fridge off 230 volt. If you're wild camping, you're going to run it off the gas flame, the symbol. And when you're travelling, you're going to run it off your 12 volt leisure battery. Now, what a lot of people think is when you're wild camping, you can run this fridge off the 12 volt leisure battery. However, that is not the case, because if it is, it would simply drain all the power from the battery. You'd be left with nothing. So it will only allow you to run the fridge off the 12 volt system when the ignition is on and when you're travelling, as this vehicle has got a built-in alternator which will send power from the vehicle battery to the leisure battery, which will then feed the fridge. So when you're stationary, when you're wild camping, gas. When you're travelling, 12 volt. Now, the great thing with this is this has got an A button, which stands for automatic. This will automatically select whichever fuel you've got. All you've got to do to select that is turn the fridge on like so by clicking the power button. Click the A button and you can see that will automatically assign whichever fuel it's got. And for example, it's selecting the 230 volt. You've then got the temperature gauge here. You can change the temperature if you need, and then you've got a little reset button should you need it. If, for example, you select the wrong fuel and it won't allow you to correct it. Turn this off. All you've got to do is hold the power button. That will turn off. And in the fridge, you've got your freezer up at the top and your fridge below. Directly opposite is the bathroom area. And as you can see in the bathroom area, we've got your toilet. We've spoken obviously about priming your system for your shower and of course for your tap. But for the toilet, we need to discuss the blade. So I mentioned on the outside of the vehicle that the blade should always be closed when removing the cassette. The blade that I mentioned was this piece of plastic here. To open it, pull it towards you. To close it, push it away from you. When the cassette is in use, you need to open that up so all the waste can drop into the cassette, and then using the blue button at the top there, press that in and that will activate your flush. That will allow you to flush the entire system, and once you've done that, you can then close the blade. Now you close the blade for two reasons. The main reason being is it stops any odours from escaping from the cassette, but the second reason is it will just get you into the habit of that being closed, so when you come to remove the cassette you won't run into any issues of it jamming. Now as I mentioned, you've got a little flush button on here. Please note that you will need your pump on for that to activate when selecting that, and when the cassette is full you'll get a little red light on here to indicate that you need to empty it. One thing to bear in mind as well when you're cleaning your shower and things like that, I'd recommend some Thetford bathroom cleaner. If you use normal generic bleach, it is too harsh, the chemicals in it, and it will decay the plastic and it will start turning it yellow. So please ensure that it is all it is bathroom cleaner for motorhomes and caravans. As I say, the Thetford one is pretty good. Now to turn this area from a bathroom to a shower, all you've got to do, turn this, and this entire system flips round. Now all you've got to do to get this into its correct position is turn the cassette, and that will allow it to connect up via a magnet there, and that will seal the entire area for the shower. You then got this curtain which will pull across to protect the door and snap onto these magnets here, and again that's your shower. In the back are your two single beds. You can see you've got a really good bit of storage above, and underneath you've got some more storage as well for hanging space. To access this hanging space, this can lift up like so, and this pops up and you can put your hangers on here and hang anything you need to. On the other side you've again a little bit more storage, which can be accessed just through here, and again quite a lot of space in here. Now one thing to mention in here is if I lift this up, you can see it gains you access to your RCD breaker. So if the vehicle ever trips, you can come to this point here and rectify the issue. As I say, the rest is storage. You'll also notice there's heating pipes as well. Everything's heated everywhere, which will run off that Truma heater which I showed you earlier, as well as the garage. In the middle step as well, you've got a little bit more storage. You've also got a double layer in here, which you can remove, which again drops down further into the garage there. You've got this false floor that just divides the space. And then finally, on here you've got a couple of options. You've got your lights here, which turns on your decorative lights at the top of the bed. And then next up, you've then got your tank heater. So as I mentioned, this vehicle has actually got a winter pack, which will give you a heated wastewater tank. You can just turn that on by selecting this, and this is 12 volts. But like I mentioned, I'd personally recommend just sticking a bucket underneath there, just to keep that water nice and warm. And then that way it'll be, as I say, sorry, if you leave that open, that water will drain out, so that way it's better, because if this was to fail, that could potentially freeze, so just bear that in mind. Now, finally, for your heater, you've got your little points here which heat and put the heating out. You've got the same thing up at the front here, and then you'll also notice there's a pipe running into there. The entire cab area is also heated thanks to the Truma blown air heating as well. And then you've also got some little night lights here, or reading lights, should you need to use them. And that concludes the handover video on this Burstner Ixeo 728. I hope you enjoyed.